In 1913, one man walked into an office in New York and paid for the tallest building in the entire world in cash. No mortgage. No loan. Around $13.5 million in a year when a good annual salary was a few hundred. The building was so beautiful they called it the Cathedral of Commerce, and for the next 17 years nothing on the planet stood taller. Here is the strange part. That fortune was not built on oil, or steel, or railroads. It was built on nickels and dimes, on candy, thread, tin cups, and cheap toys sold 5 and 10 cents at a time. And here is the stranger part. The company that paid for that tower, the retail empire that ruled the main street of nearly every American town for 100 years, is gone. Not bankrupt in a dramatic crash. Not seized by the government. It simply faded out so quietly that most people alive today have never heard its name, even though its building still stands, and even though its corporate shell is still on the stock market right now, selling you sneakers. This is the story of Woolworth. And it is one of the cleanest lessons in business you will ever hear, because the thing that made it a giant is the exact thing that killed it. To understand the fall, you have to understand how impossible the rise was. In the 1870s, shopping in America was slow and a little humiliating. You walked into a store, and everything was behind a counter. Nothing had a price on it. You told a clerk what you wanted, he fetched it, he named a number, and then you haggled, and if you looked poor, you got a worse number. Buying a spool of thread was a negotiation. A young farm boy named Frank Winfield Woolworth hated this. He was a terrible salesman, painfully shy, bad at the haggling that the whole system depended on. But being bad at the old way made him see a new way. His idea was almost insultingly simple, and it had 2 parts. Part 1, put a fixed price on everything, and make it low 5 cents. Later, 10. Part 2, and this is the revolutionary one, take the goods out from behind the counter and pile them on open tables where customers can touch them, hold them, and decide for themselves. No clerk. No haggling. No pressure. Today that sounds like every store you have ever walked into. In 1879, it was radical. His first attempt, in Utica, New York, failed in months. His second, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, exploded. People had never been trusted to just handle the merchandise before, and they loved it. He had not invented a product. He had invented a feeling, the feeling of walking in, browsing, and buying without being watched. That feeling was the real product. And it was about to conquer a continent. Once the model worked, Woolworth did something ruthless and brilliant. He realized the secret wasn't the store, it was the buying. If he could open hundreds of identical stores, he could walk up to a manufacturer and place an order so enormous that he set the price, not them. He bought directly from factories, cut out every middleman, and even sent buyers across the ocean to Germany and England to source goods nobody else in America was selling. A cup that cost him 3 cents in bulk sold for a nickel, and he sold millions of them. Each new store made the next order bigger, and each bigger order made every store cheaper. It was a machine that fed itself. By 1911, the pieces merged into a single giant, the F.W. Woolworth Company, with over 1,000 stores. A shy farm boy who couldn't haggle now controlled one of the largest retail operations on earth. And that is when he built his monument, the Woolworth Building, 792 feet of Gothic stone, paid for entirely with dimes and nickels collected a handful at a time across 1,000 towns. When Frank Woolworth died in 1919, his personal fortune was estimated at around $65 million, an almost unimaginable sum for the era. He had turned the smallest coins in America into one of its greatest fortunes. But a fortune that big does something to the family that inherits it. It insulates them. And insulation, over time, becomes blindness. Frank Woolworth had a granddaughter named Barbara Hutton, and her life is the perfect symbol of what happens to a dynasty at its peak. She inherited a fortune around $28 million as a young woman in the depths of the Great Depression, when a quarter of the country couldn't find work. While America stood in breadlines, the newspapers followed her diamonds. They called her the poor little rich girl, and it stuck, because there was something hollow at the center of all that money. She married 7 times princes, a count, a baron, a Hollywood star, and several of them, by many accounts, were more interested in the Woolworth money than in her. She threw parties that cost more than most Americans earned in a lifetime. And slowly, across the decades, she spent a fortune that had taken 1,000 stores and millions of customers to build. By the time she died in 1979, the woman who had inherited tens of millions was reportedly down to her last few $1,000s. Now, Barbara Hutton didn't run the company. But her story is the company's story in miniature. A dynasty at its height stops asking how the money is made. It assumes the machine downstairs will simply keep humming forever, funding the party upstairs. And while the family lived off the fortune, the world outside the five and dime was quietly changing shape into something the old machine was built to miss. Woolworth was built for a very specific America, the dense downtown, the crowded Main Street, the shopper who arrived on foot or by streetcar and passed a dozen store windows on the way. For 70 years that America made Woolworth rich. Then America moved. After the war came the highways, the automobile in every driveway, and the suburbs, millions of families relocating away from the old downtowns to new neighborhoods with big parking lots and even bigger stores. And in one single year, 1962, the ground shifted permanently. That year, 3 companies opened their very first stores, a discounter in Arkansas called Walmart, another in Michigan called Kmart, and a third in Minnesota called Target. Each one was built for the new world, huge, cheap, sitting in a sea of free parking, selling far more than a five and dime ever could. Woolworth was not blind to it. In that exact same year, 1962, it launched its own big box discount chain called Woolco. So it saw the future. It even reached for it. But here is the fatal move, and it is so subtle it barely looks like a decision at all. Woolworth kept one foot planted firmly in the past. It poured attention and loyalty into its aging downtown five and dimes, the stores that had built the family, the stores tied up in a century of pride and habit, and treated the new discount format as a side project. It hedged. It refused to fully cannibalize its own glorious past to fund its future. And in retail, hedging against the future is the same as choosing to lose it slowly. What followed wasn't a crash. It was an erosion, the slowest kind of death, the kind nobody puts on a magazine cover. Through the 70s and 80s, the discount giants that started in 1962 grew into national behemoths, undercutting Woolworth on price and burying it on selection. The downtown five and dime, once the beating heart of every town, became a dusty relic that shoppers walked past on their way to the mall. Woolworth's own discount attempt, Woolco, never got the full weight of the company behind it, and in 1983 the chain shut its American stores entirely. The empire was shrinking, store by store, town by town, so gradually that no single closure made the news. Then came the quiet funeral. In 1997, the F.W. Woolworth Company closed the last of its original five and dime stores in the United States, the very stores that had started it all, more than a century after that first success in Lancaster. There was no bankruptcy spectacle, no dramatic collapse. The stores just turned off the lights. That same year, the company was removed from the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the index of America's most important businesses, which it had helped define. And then came the final, almost poetic twist. The company didn't die. It had, years earlier, started a small chain of athletic shoe stores as a minor division. That little sneaker business had quietly grown into its healthiest asset. So the century-old parent company took the name of its own shoe store, and in 2001 the F.W. Woolworth Company officially became Foot Locker. The dynasty didn't go bankrupt. It got eaten by one of its own children, and it did so quietly that almost nobody noticed the giant was gone. So what actually killed Woolworth? It's tempting to say the discount stores, or the suburbs, or the malls. But those were just the weather. The real cause was internal, and it is the same trap that catches almost every fallen giant. Woolworth's genius was a specific formula: small goods, low fixed prices, dense downtown foot traffic, and that formula was so successful, for so long, that it became a religion inside the company. Loyalty to the thing that made you great slowly curdles into an inability to abandon it. Woolworth could see the future perfectly well. It literally opened a big box store the same year Walmart did. What it couldn't do was betray its own past fast enough to win. It tried to protect the glorious old empire and build the new one at the same time, and by splitting its conviction, it lost both. This is the quiet killer of legacy businesses everywhere. It is almost never that they don't see the change coming. It's that seeing it and acting on it are two completely different things, and the more successful your past, the heavier it hangs on your hands. Kodak invented the digital camera and buried it to protect film. Blockbuster laughed off a tiny mail-order startup called Netflix. And Woolworth, the company that taught America how to shop, quietly turned into a shoe store because it could not bring itself to walk away from the counter it had built. The building it paid for still stands in New York, tall and beautiful, a cathedral to a company that is gone. So the next time you see a business absolutely dominating its world, ask the uncomfortable question, what would it have to destroy about itself to survive the next 30 years, and does it have the nerve to do it? Because the graveyard of business is full of giants who saw the future clearly, and simply couldn't let go of the past. Which fading giant do you think is walking that exact road right now? Tell me in the comments, I read them.